Okay, picture this. It's 2 a.m., you suddenly jolt awake, your heart is absolutely pounding, like you can literally feel it in your throat. You're in a cold sweat, your chest is tight, every breath takes conscious effort, and this overwhelming, suffocating sense of dread just floods your mind. You are 100% convinced something terrible is about to happen. But you look around. There's no nightmare, there's no intruder, no external threat whatsoever. Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at sleep. We're taking a deep dive into the hidden operating system of human life. We're going to decode the invisible biological forces and the exact neurochemical triggers that cause your body to scream danger, right when you're supposed to be getting your deepest rest. So, why on earth does your brain trigger a full-blown fight or flight response when you're literally unconscious? Look, if you've ever experienced this terrifying wake-up call, I want to validate that sheer terror for you right off the bat. It is wildly disorienting. But here's the most important thing you need to hear today. This is not a personal failing. You aren't losing your mind. What's actually happening is a fascinating and highly treatable biological glitch. Your brain is basically running its threat detection software while you sleep. And in this explainer, we're going to treat every single symptom as a clue to figure out exactly why that software misfires. Let's jump right into section 1, the midnight false alarm. Now, before we can fix the glitch, we really have to isolate it, right? Because a lot of people tend to confuse nocturnal panic attacks with night terrors, and they are completely different beasts. Night terrors usually happen during deep sleep. The person doesn't fully transition to waking, and honestly, they rarely remember it the next morning. But a nocturnal panic attack, oh, you wake up fully. You have a vivid, terrifying memory of the whole physiological response. We need to isolate this specific experience so we can decode the exact neurology behind it. And this quote perfectly captures why the experience is so uniquely horrifying. Your amygdala takes control without oversight. Think about it. During specific stages of sleep, your prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical, reality-testing part of your brain, is mostly offline. It's asleep. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the brain's primitive fear center, is still on guard, and it doesn't need anyone's permission to sound the alarm. So when a false alarm goes off, you experience this raw, unadulterated fear without the mental framework to actually process it. Your body is reacting to a massive threat, but your conscious mind wakes up right in the middle of it with absolutely zero context. Which brings us to section 2, anatomy of a glitch. I want to introduce you to the hidden switchboard of your nervous system, the locus coeruleus. It's this tiny little nucleus tucked deep in the brainstem, and it's responsible for regulating both your sleep-wake cycle and your fight-or-flight response. Normally, during healthy, deep sleep, its firing rate is supposed to drop way down so your body can rest and recover. But in individuals who are prone to nocturnal panic, this little switchboard spontaneously dysregulates. It essentially misfires. Let's slow this whole chaotic process down and walk through the exact timeline. So, you're in lighter sleep, transitioning into deeper sleep. Suddenly, bam, the locus coeruleus misfires. This triggers an immediate, massive surge of norepinephrine, basically adrenaline, all throughout your central nervous system. Before your brain even finishes waking up, your sympathetic nervous system is fully activated. Your heart rate shoots from, say, 60 up to 120 beats per minute in seconds. And only then does your prefrontal cortex wake up, completely confused, desperately trying to make sense of a body that's already in full survival mode. But let's peel back another layer here. Why exactly does this switchboard misfire in the first place? Well, researchers point to something called the false suffocation alarm. See, during normal sleep, your breathing naturally fluctuates, and that causes tiny, completely harmless increases in your blood's carbon dioxide levels. But in hypersensitive individuals, the brainstem totally misinterprets these normal biological shifts as asphyxia. It's a tragic irony, really. Your brain literally thinks you are suffocating, so it hits the emergency eject button to wake you up and save a life that was never actually in danger. Moving on to section 3, fear of losing vigilance. This brings us to a really profound psychological model. It's called the fear of loss of vigilance theory. This suggests that for some people, the brain perceives the loss of conscious awareness during sleep not as restorative rest, but as a massive vulnerability. It's an evolutionary mismatch. Your brain feels this intense, overwhelming responsibility to protect you, right? And sleep is a state where you literally cannot monitor your surroundings. So the transition from light sleep to deep sleep is treated by the brain as entering a danger zone, which keeps the whole nervous system completely on edge. And this theory is backed up by an absolutely paradigm-shifting statistic: 85%. Research shows that 85% of nocturnal panickers report a history of traumatic events. To put that into perspective, that's compared to just 28% of people who only experience daytime panic attacks. So what does this tell us? When you have a history of trauma, your nervous system's hypervigilance software is just constantly running in the background. Simply letting your guard down to sleep becomes a terrifying prospect for the subconscious mind. Next up is Section 4, the hidden ripple effect. Here on The Explainer, we never just look at isolated facts. We always want to reveal the interconnected systems. Because, let's be real, a nocturnal panic attack doesn't just ruin a single night's sleep. It sets off a severe cascade of consequences across your entire biology. You start developing progressive insomnia because your amygdala actually starts associating your own bedroom with danger. You might even develop this agoraphobic avoidance of sleeping anywhere but your own house. And this chronic sleep fragmentation, it severely dysregulates your HPA axis, which is your body's main stress response system, creating a vicious bidirectional cycle with major depression. Biology influences emotions, and emotions turn right around and influence biology. And this data brilliantly illustrates exactly why these attacks tend to happen when they do. Cortisol, your body's primary stress hormone, naturally surges in the pre-dawn hours. It typically starts its climb around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. just to prepare you to wake up for the day. But if your nervous system is already sensitized and hypervigilant, this totally natural hormonal shift is like pouring gasoline on a smoldering fire. It tips the scales and forces that sensitive nervous system to misfire into a full-blown panic attack. Finally, Section 5, rewiring your nervous system. So, the big question, how do we fix the software? Well, the ultimate key to recovery is understanding and then breaking a process known as interoceptive conditioning. Right now, your amygdala has basically learned to generate a massive fear response to perfectly normal, totally neutral physical sensations, like that subtle little shift in your heart rate as you drop into deeper sleep. To actually cure nocturnal panic, we have to teach the brain to stop viewing these normal physiological sleep stage shifts as cardiac emergencies. Let's start with the immediate emergency response. When you wake up in sheer terror, remember, your rational brain is completely offline. You need an emergency grounding protocol to manually reboot your system. First, sit up right away and put both feet flat on the floor. This gives continuous grounding tactile sensory input to your disoriented brain. Next, use the 3-3-3 rule. Consciously force yourself to identify 3 things you can see, hear, and touch. This forces your prefrontal cortex back online. Finally, take small sips of cool water. The physical act of swallowing actually engages the vagus nerve and parasympathetic pathways, actively sending a competing signal to shut that sympathetic panic response right down. But for long-term rewiring, the gold standard clinical treatment is cognitive behavioral therapy, specifically adapted for panic. This involves something called interoceptive exposure. This is where, under professional guidance, you safely and deliberately recreate those physical sensations, like an elevated heart rate, to teach your amygdala that these feelings are actually totally benign. It also uses stimulus control, so teaching you that if you can't fall back asleep within 20 minutes, you literally must leave the bed. Why? To break that deep association between your mattress and sheer panic. You systematically eliminate those safety behaviors so your brain finally truly learns that it is perfectly safe to power down. We've unraveled the neurochemistry, the evolutionary psychology, and the massive biological ripple effect of nocturnal panic. Look, it is an incredibly intense, terrifying experience, but it is not a character flaw. It is just neurology waiting to be decoded and rewired. Which leaves us with one final question for you. Will you let your brain's false alarms control your nights, or will you use this operating manual to finally take back your sleep? The choice to rewrite your biological software can start tonight. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep investigating and sleep well.